quick as we possibly can this evening. The order, the names were drawn. Number one was Mark Kelly, followed by Libby Garvey, and then Audrey Clement. They can come to the podium to make their own closing statements, and please answer the questions from your seat.
Well, thank you very much. It's an honor to be with you tonight here at the Civic Federation. My name is Mark Kelly, and I am the Republican candidate in the upcoming March 27th special election. My wife Kirsten and I live in South Arlington. We've been homeowners here for 12 years. I'm a member of the Arlington Ridge Civic Association. We have 4 wonderful children, 3 of whom are at Claremont Immersion Public Elementary School. Professionally, for 15 years, I've worked on and around Capitol Hill on federal public policy for 2 members of Congress and a leading think tank. This is my second run for the county board, and like 2010, I'm running because I believe we can maintain our quality of life without breaking the bank. And we need new leadership to present a strong alternative vision for the county. As I talk to voters across Arlington, they are concerned about our board's priorities. The rate of spending we have been on is unsustainable, particularly in light of the very real cuts that could be facing the Pentagon and other federal agencies. If you look back over the past decade, property tax collections have doubled. Inflation is only up 24%, and wages have only risen by 40%. Yet what do we read about in the news? Failed artisphere, the trolley, the new black box theater, and my new personal favorite, housing for hipsters. Yet the board still advertised another 2-cent rate increase, something the Sun Gazette called Fantasyland, but my Democrat opponent thought was reasonable. I think it would be more reasonable to change the trajectory of spending by lowering the amount of revenue available to our board to spend. It's more reasonable to put our checkbook online and bring more accountability by hiring an independent inspector general. Increased transparency and accountability are good things. Hopefully tonight we'll have more time to talk about other ways the board is out of touch with us. I look forward to your questions. The only way I believe to change course is to elect someone who is not part of the one-party establishment. Unless the board knows voters care enough to replace one of them, they will never change course.
Good evening. It's great of all of you to do this and stay here tonight. I know it's a long program. I think the question for this part of the program for all of us actually is who's best able to manage change so that as Arlington grows, it stays the home that we all love. And this really is a pivotal time for Arlington. We need leaders who know how to manage change, move us forward, but keep what we value. We face big challenges: affordable housing, transportation, growth, maintaining core services, and all in a time of tight budgets. For the past 15 years, I have been managing change on the school board, and our schools have seen a lot of change. In 1996, there were inequities in our school system. Our capital program was a mess, and I ran for school board to make things better. Since then, we have renovated and rebuilt almost every one of our schools, largely on time and on budget. We have closed the achievement gap by about 50%. Our 4 high schools are in the top 2% in the nation, and people like Arnie Duncan and companies like Boeing moved to Arlington for our public schools. I've worked with 11 different school board members over the years, hired 2 chief executives, voted on 15 budgets, and the most recent, about $500 million. Arlington Public Schools, I think as Abby pointed out, employs more people than any other institution in Arlington except the federal government. We run a large transportation and food service system. I've been chair 5 times. I know how to do this job. I also know the people on the board, which has been helpful because we have on the school side have faced some tough issues. I'm proud of the progress we've made. We've come so far because your schools, I think as we made clear in the presentation, have clear goals and priorities, and we stick to them. We are transparent, we monitor how we are doing, and we report to taxpayers. We keep looking ahead to work strategically. For example, because we pressed forward with getting Wakefield designed, we could take advantage of the suddenly low construction costs, and that saved the taxpayers about $30 million. This way of working is, I think, exactly what we need in our next county board member to make sure that as we grow and change, our core services, public safety, education, transportation, our infrastructure and safety net for our most vulnerable remains strong, and Arlington remains the diverse and vibrant community we love. I look forward to your questions tonight. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Audrey Clement, and I'm running for Arlington County Board, and I seek your vote. I'm an 8-year
Westover resident with a doctorate in political science and service as a congressional fellow. As a longtime Green Party leader and civic activist, I've worked hard to promote a better quality of life for Arlington residents. Libby Garvey says she's proud of the 3 new high schools built on her watch. Yet at $100 million, Washington and Lee is one of the most expensive high schools for its size in the nation. At $18,000 per year per pupil, Arlington Public Schools spends more than any other school district in Northern Virginia. So it's likely that if elected, Libby will support the county's current budget priorities, which emphasize white elephant projects over basic needs. Mark Kelly says he wants fiscal responsibility, yet Kelly's employed as legislative director for a Tea Party congressman who is peddling toxic legislation that will bar EPA from regulating greenhouse gases, particulates, and pesticides, and the National Labor Relations Board from supervising union elections. So Kelly is clearly out of touch with Arlington voters. If elected to county board, I will promote fiscal responsibility without sacrificing the health and welfare of its residents. My top priority will be funding essential government services by expanding library hours, replacing trailers with classrooms, repaving streets, restoring programs for seniors, youth, and disabled. Next, I will eliminate wasteful spending projects like the Artisphere Long Bridge Park Aquatic and Fitness Center and the Columbia Pike Trolley. Finally, I will promote sustainability by consolidating housing programs in one agency to leverage more funds for affordable housing, provide a year-round homeless shelter that will not break the budget, use the commercial real estate tax to provide more art bus service, and hire an inspector general. Thank you for inviting me to this forum. I look forward to your questions.
5 names have been drawn, and if you could come to the microphone. The first was a person whose name I said I would not be able to pronounce when he wrote it, and I can't. It's Waverly Hills, Alex Leichten, and please, you'll correct me when you get up to it. Followed by Duke Banks, thank you for that name, Catherine Scruggs, and Bob Atkins, and if there is time, that will be the last question would be by Michael Beers. Okay, please.
Alex Luchenitzer, Waverly Hills. What's your position on how the county budget should be shared with the public schools and what percentage should go to the public schools?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm very sorry. We will start the first question with Mark Kelly, followed by Libby, and after that we will move down one person sequentially. If the question is not addressed to a specific person.
I've often said when talking to people that it's a little disappointing that our school budget is based on lines on an Excel spreadsheet instead of actually sitting down and looking at needs and working that out with the county board and saying, this is what we need this year. What we are locked into is a formula, and it just continues to increase every year, whereas some year maybe needs are greater and some year needs are less. So I would advocate for completely revisiting the revenue sharing agreement and basing it off of needs, have the superintendent and the school board come to the county board and make a case for what our schools actually need. And we should require transparency from them as well. I've been advocating for putting our county's checkbook online. I think we should do the same for the schools. I think if we hire an inspector general, they ought to be able to look at the school budget as well.
We actually did have a revenue sharing agreement that was developed a number of years ago, because what we found was every year we were having large battles with the county board, and it was taking a lot of time and energy, and it all ended up always being about $200,000. It was a lot of time and energy, and we realized that we were actually using the same percentage pretty much every year. So that's how we got to the 46.1%. The revenue sharing agreement is revisited every year, and as you heard earlier, if you were here, it's really in the process of a large revision, and I think absolutely it needs to be based on needs. The direction we gave the superintendent actually was to come forward with a budget that matched what the manager said, but we said if there are any other needs, let us know, and we will go and talk to the county board. Absolutely, we need to have the dialogue going back and forth, and I think it will change every year, particularly as we are growing now. When you bring on, you add a few students. If it comes to a school, if you don't have to add a principal, you don't have to add a gym, you don't have to, it's not so expensive. But when we get to the point where more students mean more schools, more principals, then you take a quantum leap in the increase of cost, and we have to make sure that we do that if we need to.
Well, I support in principle, the revenue sharing agreement that County Board worked out with the school board some years ago. I'm also not averse to a flat percentage, but the facet or feature of the revenue sharing agreement that I like is that it keeps the percentages stable over time with increases reflecting increases in enrollment. If we do go with a percentage, however, I would say let's push to 50%. That's a nice even fraction. And it looks like Arlington Green Party has done some analysis and decided that it's going to cost about $90 million per year to fund the additional enrollments. So that's why that percentage probably needs to increase.
Duke Banks, also from Waverly Hills. What are we going to do to try to create more of a sense of fiscal responsibility, fiscal restraint, to basically lower the overall costs? As an example, for the schools, we have approximately $18,000 per pupil. That's quite a lot of money. It's I think it's the highest in the state of Virginia. And there's a lot that can be done that will not impact salaries and whatnot, but not only in schools, but in other areas where our tax rates, instead of being projected to go all the way up to 2%, possibly could drop 1%. What suggestions do you have?
I think we provide good value on the schools, which I think the earlier presentation showed. About 86% of the school's cost is salary and benefits. One of the things that we have done since I came on the board 15 years ago, and we talked about a little bit in the last presentation, is constant evaluations. We have a culture of constantly evaluating. Every 6 years, a department or a program is thoroughly evaluated, often by outside evaluators. And they're looking at not only the quality of the services we're delivering, but are we doing it in as a cost-efficient way as we can. I have not seen too much of that on the county side, and I'll tell you, you learn a lot when you really have someone from the outside working with staff. It's a collaborative effort. It's not about punishing anybody, but really combing through what you're doing and looking at what you're doing to try and figure out how we can do it better. Because often in human institutions, people come, things change, and things just keep adding and accreting. And what you need to do is comb through and look at things, and you need to do that in a regular fashion, and that's something that I'd like to bring to the county board.
Oh, okay. Yeah, well, could you repeat the question again, please?
Well, how to promote fiscal
Oh, okay, sure. Sorry.
restraint within the county?
Yes. First of all, I am primarily concerned about the large capital spending project or capital spending budget that the county board has contemplated. In particular, I'm concerned about the Columbia Pike trolley. I don't think that the county needs it. It does need improved transportation on Columbia Pike, but one of its own recent studies indicates that improved bus service can be achieved at a fraction, approximately 1/4 of the cost, or even less than the trolley. And the other project that I'm most concerned about is the Longbridge Park Aquatic and Fitness Center, which is estimated first phase at completion $50 million. We don't need that either. We certainly don't need any more spending than the $50 million that's already been budgeted. And I'm also concerned about the new black box theater, which is going to cost the county which is going to increase the county's operating budget by several million a year.
I certainly agree about the trolley, the Artisphere, the black box theater, and looking at the budget, and I think there's some other ways we could save some money. The county manager has called for 37 new full-time employees. I think we could certainly not hire those right now. There are several positions in the county that have been unfilled for many months. I think we could probably just wait to hire those. The new building at where the homeless shelter is contemplated, which we're going to pay 40% over the assessed value for. I think we should put the brakes on that, which is $2 million in debt service. As I said earlier, I talked about transparency and an inspector general. I think if you force folks to put all their expenditures online, you're going to see a lot more responsibility in what they decide to spend money on. So I think looking at specific items as well as an overall culture of transparency and accountability will help us find savings.
Catherine Strutz, the Alliance for Housing Solutions. If you believe that maintaining an economic, racial, ethnic diversity should be a prime goal of Arlington County, how do you propose to preserve the 6,000 units of affordable housing on Columbia Pike?
Well, one thing I absolutely oppose doing is the Columbia Pike trolley, because that's going to act as a draw. It's going to serve to increase demand for housing along the pike, which in turn will further inflate rents. And I'm sure you know that the county planner itself has acknowledged that of the some 1,000 units constructed along the pike in the last 2 years, all of them have been luxury units. None of them have been affordable. What I would do is what the Arlington Green Party has long advocated, which is to create a housing agency that will consolidate the nonprofit housing programs of the county under one umbrella and leverage more funds for affordable housing. You may not know that we promoted a referendum several years ago to do that, and the county's response was to have the legislature pass a bill that made it virtually impossible to put such a referendum on the ballot in this county again. So while the county talks a good tune, it doesn't walk the walk when it comes to housing.
From someone who thinks I'm out of touch with the county, we certainly agree on this Columbia Pike streetcar. Some of the most affordable rate housing is along the pike. So if we decide to put this streetcar down and start doing what the county wants to do with it, we are going to lose affordable housing, market rate affordable housing that we don't even have to get developers to build. So I think for a streetcar project that's going to cost us over $300 million by the time the street improvements are done, that is going to wreak havoc with some of the businesses that are already there, that is not replacing buses, it's just supplementing buses. They have problems with Skyline stop, which would, if that stop's unavailable, would not actually increase ridership along the pike. To me, this project is a complete boondoggle. It's been studied to death. We know it's a bad idea. We shouldn't do it.
Well, my concerns about the streetcar actually don't have to do so much with affordable housing, except for the fact about how expensive it looks like it's going to be, and I actually don't think it's been studied to death. I think there are a lot of questions that I personally have about that streetcar and whether it is a good use of the money and we need to do it. Whether or not we put the streetcar in, we're going to be losing, or we're very likely to lose those market rate affordable houses because of market forces. A lot of those are aging stock that has got to be renovated. And what we need to be doing is working with the existing owners as much as possible to try to preserve that stock, providing them tax breaks, perhaps loans, low interest loans that they can rehab and still make money by continuing to keep them affordable. We have lost, as I know you know, Catherine, about 2/3 of our affordable housing since 2000. I mean, we are on a trend that it can't be continued if we want to keep diversity. So I think what we need to do is do something different. We need to, one, probably do more of what we're doing already, and that we have a variety of revolving funds and things that we can do, and public-private partnerships, which I think are quite effective, and I think we need to look at doing some different things as well.
Good evening, Robert Atkins, representing Bluemont, ACTA, and AGLA. When it comes time to vote on the budget, you don't have a line item called hope or change to vote on. There are specific line items. Where would any of the three of you differ with the manager's proposed budget in a very specific line item? What are your priorities, line item by line item?
Well, thanks, Bob. The county manager's budget is over $1 billion now. That it's going to, if the 2-cent tax increase was going to go through, would cause the average tax bill to go over $5,000 for the first time. I don't think we should do that. So I would look at it at an actual rate cut rather than a rate increase. I mentioned the FTEs earlier, the new employees. I think we should look at some of the existing openings we have and not hire in those. I mentioned the new homeless shelter building. I think we need to stop there. The Artisphere subsidies, I would cut those. The $500,000 in bonuses to senior staff. I'd look at how we do closeout funds. Our revenue estimates consistently come in on average 3 or 4% under what they adopt the budget at, and we go ahead and spend that money anyway. I think we should treat those, that revenue, or the budget as a ceiling and not a floor to start from.
Well, line item by line item is not a very good way, I don't think, for school board or a county board member to be working through a budget. I'm right now trying to do 2 budgets to some extent. You really have to depend on your staff to be doing good work. None of us, I don't think anybody in this room is able to sit down and go through that whole budget and know in detail what's really going on. So what you have to do is set in place structures. And one of those includes the evaluations, the regular evaluations that I talked about. I'd like to see those put into place. Also monitoring, regular monitoring of what's going on with reports that are, yes, transparent and people can see and look at. A couple of concerns I have, one actually is the size of reserves we have. We have quite large reserves, and I'm not clear at this point about what they are all for, and I'm planning to, that's actually one of the first questions I'm planning to ask when I get there and find out what those reserves are for. But again, it's not the job of a board member to go line item by line item, because you're going to miss things. You've got to work at a higher level. You need to be able to set in place good monitoring, good evaluation, and you've got to hire good people. You've got to make sure you've got good people.
Well, first of all, there's 2 things I would do differently. First, I would establish upfront the budget priorities that the county should promote, and they need to change. We need to refocus away from wasteful capital spending projects to basic needs. And by basic needs, I mean schools, I mean the libraries, public safety, and streets. I'm sure some of you have heard that the state legislature, in an act of retribution, plans to cut $100,000 from the county's street maintenance budget. I think that's deplorable, but I think that the county should act maturely in the face of retribution from the state legislature and trim its budget now in accordance with the budget priorities that I've laid out.
The last question will be by Michael G.
Michael Beer from Maywood. When I look at elected officials, I want to know that you're going to be good managers, but I want to know that you have a vision and a strategy. In 37 years, we're going to have 420 million people in this country. What is your plans for Arlington for the next 10 and 20 years? Are we just going to become a gated community and not change? Or are we going to do our part to invest in the future? What's your vision and strategy for the future, 10, 20 years?
And yeah, I get that first and in 2 minutes or 1 minute. However, then I really will have to make it a large overall answer. One, setting in place. I mean, the important part of government, people ask me actually, what is my big issue? I just want this county to work well. That's what I want. I want to make sure we've got good structures, good basic structures in place, good schools, and then people will make it work. We need to have a support system for the most vulnerable. We need to set in, I think, more in place this system of evaluation, a culture of constant improvement where we're wonderful, and we are, and we say good things, but we can't stop getting better. You can't stop. You've got to constantly be working at it. One of the things I'm actually looking forward to doing, and I hope this works out for me, I hope I'll have all your votes, by the way, on the 27th, is working with the contacts I have around the region. Because the issues that we face really are regional issues. And transportation, even the education, we need to be working around the region, across the river. There's a group called the 2030 group, and I'm really looking forward to sitting down and talking with them. There's some other groups too that are doing this, but I know people in Fairfax, Alexandria, Cog, because I've worked with all of them for the past 15 years, and I'm really looking forward to putting those relationships to work to move forward. Thank you.
Well, primarily, I think the change in vision that Arlington County requires, at least in order to maintain the Arlington Way, is to switch out of an elite democratic model whereby a cadre of leaders provides us with direction, and we're generally more or less required to go along. We hope that we're in the majority on some issues, but if we're not, that's the end of the discussion. And we need to go to a grassroots democracy model whereby forums like these provide the primary, not the secondary inputs to the priorities developed by county board. I think if we make greater strides to democratize our community, we will have better long-term results.
Well, having 4 children under the age of 10, I certainly understand where you're coming from. one of the reasons I decided to run is because I do care about what the county's going to look like. We plan to stay here. We plan to have our kids grow up here, and if they love it here, they'll stay as well. You know, as I've been across Arlington through 2 runs for the board and 1 other run, what I appreciate about it is the diversity of the neighborhoods that we have now. I certainly don't think we should say, well, they should never, but we should support the different neighborhoods and help and work with them as they're developing kind of a vision for where they want to go. We need to listen to them. We went through the Crystal City site plan down near where I live, and after months and months of going back and forth with the board, they made no changes, and they gave us a advisory committee, which we all know means more talking and no listening. So I think we need to change the way the board approaches working with the community.
We will now have closing statements, 2 minutes per candidate, starting with Mark Kelly, followed by Jibby Garvey, and then Andre Clement.
Thank you, and thank you for your time. I know it's getting late this evening. I appreciate all of you being here and for your commitment to this community. I know if you're here tonight, it means that you care about the future of Arlington. And time is really short in the few number of questions that we got to share a complete vision for what each of us would do as a county board member. But as you can probably guess, you have a very real choice in the direction you want to go on March 27th. You can vote for another member of the establishment club, someone who was endorsed early on by the woman she seeks to represent, or seeks to replace. Another vote for business as usual and more of the same. Or you can elect diversity of opinion on March 27th. You can elect someone who will call for fiscal sanity, someone who will offer budget alternatives, who will advocate for more transparency and more accountability. You can elect someone who's going to oppose vanity projects like the Columbia Pike Trolley, someone who's going to ask the tough questions about housing for hipsters and bike helmets for all. If you elect me, my first order of business will be to offer input into the fiscal year 2013 budget. My experience as a budget analyst for 2 members of Congress will allow me to hit the ground running on these complex issues and offer an alternative proposal to what the county board and the county manager have proposed. My highest priorities in that budget will be straightforward: education, including revisiting the revenue sharing agreement, public safety, infrastructure, and maintenance. Whether my proposal wins or loses, and being one Republican on the board means it'll probably lose, Arlingtonians will know what it will look like for them to be able to keep more of their hard-earned money. And this is so critically important as our national economic recovery has slowed down, as our federal government is facing cuts, and our local economy is so inextricably linked with the federal government. On March 27th, you can send a message to the county board. Let them know you're watching. Let them know you expect them to be more in touch with you and less in touch with their pet projects and the special interests who have their ears. I'll be accountable only to you. I won't be accountable to any other elected official in Arlington because they're all Democrats. On March 27th, please vote for Mark Kelly for county board.
Well, thank you all for being here. Actually, the county board did get a wake-up call with my primary win. If you followed that, I was not supported by any of the sitting members of the county board, and I won quite handily. This is a wonderful home in Arlington, and I think it's our sense of community, which we see here tonight, of openness, of a place where the system works pretty well. It needs always some adjusting, which we're always working on, but it really makes Arlington very special, and we've got to keep it that way. Working as much as possible for everyone, keep that sense of community as we grow and change, and that's the goal, and it's why I'm running. What I can offer to you is my 15 years of experience working on some of the county's toughest issues leading change. Again, if you look at my history, you can see I'm a good Democrat, but I'm also a pretty independent one. As I said in the last primary, none of the sitting county board members supported me. When I ran for re-election to the school board in '08, only one of the current sitting county board members supported me in that race, which is really pretty unusual in Arlington. What I promise to you is to work as I always have, and I will always listen to you and everyone else in Arlington, anyone who will talk to me. And I'm always going to be looking ahead. I don't expect everyone to always agree with me. But I do expect that when I make a decision, you will know what information I used to make that decision and how I arrived at it. And if you don't know, ask me. I may have trouble sometimes telling you, but I know I need to, and I will, and expect you to hold me accountable in that way. I will, as always, make my decisions based on what I think is best for the entire county. I hope very much to have your support on the 27th. And again, thank you so much for all being here. This is a wonderful community. I so do want to continue my public service. I think I've done a lot with the schools in the last 15 years, and I'm really looking forward to taking that experience and serving the whole county again. Thank you.
Arlington County is a great place to live thanks to citizens like you who actively participate in civic life. But our suburban lifestyle is threatened because the county board doesn't understand that sustainable growth and so-called smart growth aren't the same. To be sustainable, basic public infrastructure must keep pace with new residential and commercial construction. Sustainability also requires the county board to support, not discourage, construction of moderate income housing. Otherwise, those who move into the county are stuck in a never-ending cycle of tax and rent increases as others are gentrified out, which is not economically sustainable for anyone in the long run. To be sustainable, we need to do more than accumulate LEED points. We need truly energy-efficient buildings and on-site renewable energy. To be sustainable, we must appreciate the difference between needs and wants. We don't need a $50 million aquatic center when Northern Virginia is already drowning in public pools. We don't need a $250 million trolley when bus service can be upgraded at a fraction of the cost. We may want a cultural center and a black box theater, but we must get the private sector to finance them, not the taxpayers. We may like the already overcapacity Taj Mahal High Schools recently constructed in the county, but what we need is to expand classroom space at a reasonable cost, even if that means building up or renovating rather than building new. If elected, I pledge to make developers pay their fair share of infrastructure costs. I also plan to fully fund libraries, schools, and programs for youth, seniors, and disabled, emphasize recycling and renewable energy, and hire an inspector general to audit the county budget. You can find out more about my campaign for a greener Arlington by visiting audreyclement.org. With your help, I can preserve the Arlington way. Vote Clement for county board on March 27th.